You couldn't even get one dinner right, Olivia. Margaret Hayes said it softly, but the whole table heard her. Stay with the last receipt, because what my mother-in-law ruined at that table was nothing compared to what the hospital exposed next. I stood beside the dining chair with a serving spoon in my hand, watching gravy slide across the white linen like a brown stain spreading through water. For 3 hours, I had cooked like peas could be baked, roasted, and plated. Daniel had wanted this dinner. Just one calm night, he had said that morning, kissing my forehead while I tied my apron. Mom has been trying lately. She tries when people are watching, I said. He sighed. Olivia. I know, I said. One calm night. So I made rosemary chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans with almonds, and the apple tart Daniel loved since college. I even bought Margaret's favorite sparkling water, the expensive glass bottle kind she always pretended not to notice. When she arrived, she kissed the air beside my cheek. Oh, sweetheart, she said, looking past me into the hallway. You did all this yourself? I did. How brave. Daniel gave me a warning glance from behind her shoulder. Claire came in behind Margaret with a bottle of wine and a tired smile. Robert followed quietly, carrying Margaret's coat like it was made of glass. Mom's had a hard week, Claire whispered to me. Please don't take anything personally tonight. I almost laughed. That was always the rule in Daniel's family. Margaret could aim. Margaret could cut. Margaret could bleed you in public with a butter knife smile. But I was the one told not to feel it. Dinner started with small talk. Daniel told everyone about his promotion at Whitmore and Lane. Robert raised his glass. To Daniel, Robert said. Hard work finally noticed. Margaret smiled at my husband like he was still 8 years old and waiting for her approval. My boy always had discipline, she said. Even when the wrong people tried to distract him. My fingers tightened around my napkin. Daniel cleared his throat. Mom. What? She said, blinking. I meant work stress. Claire looked down at her plate. I kept my smile fixed. The chicken is wonderful, Robert said. Thank you, I said. Margaret cut a tiny piece, touched it to her tongue, and set down her fork. Oh. Daniel looked at her. What is it? Nothing. Mom. No, no. Olivia worked hard. I don't want to embarrass her. The room went thinner. I could hear the little click of the dining room clock above the sideboard. Margaret, I said evenly, if something is wrong, please tell me. She placed one hand against her chest. It's just very salty. Claire took a bite quickly. I think it's fine. Margaret's eyes moved to her daughter. Claire, darling, you don't need to lie to protect anyone. My throat tightened, but I kept breathing. Daniel tasted the chicken. It's not salty. Margaret smiled at him with sad patience. You were always loyal. That was the first knife. The second came when I reached for the potatoes. Oh, careful, she said. I paused. With what? With the almonds. You know my stomach has been delicate. There are almonds on the green beans, I said. You told Daniel you weren't allergic. I said I avoid them. No, you said you were fine with them. Her lips parted. Daniel looked at me. Olivia, it's okay. We can move the dish. I'm not arguing, I said. I'm clarifying. Margaret pushed back from the table slowly, making the chair legs scream against the hardwood. Please don't make this about being right. Heat climbed up my neck. I'm not. She reached for her water, but her hand knocked the gravy boat. It tipped hard, hit the platter, and poured over the rosemary chicken. The dish I had spent all afternoon making drowned in front of everyone. Oh my God, Claire said, jumping up. Margaret gasped and grabbed her wrist. Daniel, don't just stand there. Your mother is shaking. I looked at the gravy boat. It was not near her hand. She had reached across the table to hit it. Daniel rushed to Margaret's side. "Mom, breathe." "I didn't mean to," she whispered. Robert stood. "Let's get towels." I moved toward the kitchen. Margaret followed me before anyone could notice. The kitchen smelled like butter, rosemary, and smoke from the pan I had forgotten on low heat. I grabbed a towel from the drawer. Margaret stood behind me. "You need to learn your place in this family," she said. Her voice was different without witnesses. Flat. Dry. Almost bored. I turned slowly. "What did you say?" She smiled. "I said you need help cleaning." My hand was still inside the drawer. My phone sat beside the sink. I looked at it, then at her. For the first time that night, I did not answer. I turned the screen down, tapped the side button twice, and opened the voice memo shortcut Daniel had once set up for grocery lists. Margaret did not notice. She stepped closer. "You think one dinner makes you the center of his life?" I picked up the towel. "You ruined the dish." "You ruined the family," she said. "I'm just correcting the table." The towel felt rough against my palm. For 1 second, I was 10 years old again, standing in my father's kitchen after my stepmother broke a glass and told everyone I had done it. Back then, nobody believed me because I cried too hard. Tonight, I refused to cry at all. Daniel appeared in the doorway. "Everything okay?" Margaret turned instantly, one hand on her chest again. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Olivia is upset, that's all." Daniel looked at me. "Liv?" I wanted to say, "She is lying." Instead, I said, "I'm getting towels." His face softened with relief, and that hurt worse than suspicion. Because he did not ask what happened. He just accepted the version that made the night easier. When we returned, Claire was blotting gravy from the tablecloth while Robert scraped chicken onto a plate. Margaret sank into her chair like a wounded queen. "I'm sorry I ruined your dinner," she said loudly. The room froze. I set the towels down. "You didn't ruin my dinner by accident." Claire's eyes snapped up. "Olivia." Daniel's voice lowered. "Not now." Margaret's mouth trembled. I knew this would happen. What would happen? I asked. "You'd turn everyone against me." Robert rubbed his forehead. "Let's not do this." Margaret leaned into Daniel's arm. "I tried to be kind. I tried to help. But she hates me." "That's not true," I said. "Then why did you make food you knew might make me sick?" "I confirmed the menu with Daniel yesterday." Daniel looked between us. "You did," he said carefully. "But maybe there was a misunderstanding." Margaret closed her eyes. "There is always a misunderstanding when your wife is involved." The room went silent. My pulse beat once, hard, behind my ears. Claire whispered, "Mom, that was harsh." Margaret's eyes opened. "Harsh? I am sitting here humiliated, and you're worried about my tone?" Claire looked away again. That was how Margaret won. She made people feel guilty for noticing the weapon. The house phone rang. No one moved at first. It rang again, sharp and ugly through the dining room. Daniel frowned. "Who calls the house phone?" "We barely use it," I said. Margaret's face changed. It was quick, but I saw it. Not confusion. Fear. I walked to the side table and picked up. "Hello?" A woman's voice came through, professional and careful. "Good evening. I'm calling from St. Catherine's Hospital. May I speak with Margaret Hayes?" My eyes moved to Margaret. Her hand was gripping the edge of the table. "This is Olivia Hayes," I said. "Margaret is here." The woman paused. "This is regarding Rose Whitaker." Margaret stood so fast her chair hit the wall. "Hang up." Daniel turned to her. "Mom?" Margaret's face had gone pale under her makeup. Hang up the phone, Olivia. The hospital worker continued, Mrs. Hayes, we have Margaret Hayes listed as Rose Whitaker's emergency contact. I held the receiver tighter. Rose Whitaker? Margaret crossed the room. That is a scam. Daniel's voice was quiet. Mom, who is Rose Whitaker? Margaret looked at him, then at me, then back at the phone. My mother is dead. The woman on the line said, Sir, Rose Whitaker is alive, and she is asking for her daughter. Nobody spoke. Even the clock seemed to stop. Margaret reached for the phone, but I stepped back. For the first time all night, her mask cracked. And underneath it, there was no fragile old woman. There was a lie that had just heard its name. Margaret stared at the phone like it had crawled out of a grave. Give it to me, she said. I kept the receiver against my ear. The hospital worker's voice stayed calm. Mrs. Hayes, I understand this may be sensitive, but Rose Whitaker asked us to contact Margaret Hayes. Daniel took one step toward his mother. Mom, answer me. Who is Rose Whitaker? Margaret laughed once. It was the wrong sound. Too sharp. Too fast. This is ridiculous, she said. Scammers use old names all the time. They look through records. They frighten families. Hang up. Claire looked at me. Maybe she's right. Hospitals don't call house phones like this. They called the number listed, I said. Margaret's eyes cut into me. You don't know that. I repeated into the phone, can I verify your name and department? Of course, the woman said. This is Laura Mitchell, Patient Services Coordinator at St. Catherine's Hospital. I pulled my cell phone from my pocket with my free hand. My fingers were cold on the screen. I took a screenshot of the house phone caller ID display. Margaret saw the flash of light from my phone. What are you doing? Saving the number. For what? She snapped. For clarity. Daniel looked uncomfortable. Liv, maybe don't make this feel like an investigation. I turned to him. Your mother just said her mother is dead, and a hospital says she's alive. His jaw tightened. Margaret pressed her hand to her chest again. Daniel, listen to yourself. You are letting your wife humiliate me over a scam call. Mom, I just asked a question. And I answered it, she said. My mother died years ago. The woman on the line spoke again. Mrs. Hayes, I'm sorry, but Rose Whitaker is currently admitted under our care. I put the phone on speaker. Margaret's face hardened. Take it off speaker. No. Daniel looked at me. Claire whispered, Olivia. I said, everyone heard the accusation against me at dinner. Everyone can hear this too. The room went still. The hospital worker said, for privacy reasons, I cannot discuss full medical details without authorization. But Rose Whitaker is asking for Margaret Hayes. She has asked several times. Robert's face had changed. He was no longer cleaning the table. Rose, he said quietly. Margaret spun toward him. Don't. Daniel looked at his father. Dad? Robert swallowed. I haven't heard that name in a long time. Margaret's voice dropped. Because she is gone. The woman on the phone said, I can provide the hospital's main line. You may call back through the operator and ask for patient services. That won't be necessary, Margaret said loudly. I spoke over her. Please give me the number. Margaret stepped closer. Olivia, hang up. Daniel moved between us. Mom, stop. Her eyes filled instantly. Oh. So now I'm the problem. Nobody answered. She turned to Claire. You see what she's doing? Claire hesitated. I think calling back through the hospital makes sense. Margaret stared at her daughter as if Claire had slapped her. You too? Claire looked down. I just mean it would settle it. Margaret's mouth trembled. It never settles with people like Olivia. There it was again. Not grief. Not fear. Control. I wrote the hospital number in my notes app. Then I saved Laura Mitchell's name and department. The receiver felt heavy when I finally ended the call. The dining room smelled like cooled gravy and rosemary. The sweet apple tart on the sideboard suddenly made my stomach twist. I had wanted this night to be proof that I could fit. Now I realized Margaret had come here planning to prove I never would. Daniel rubbed both hands over his face. Okay, he said. We call the main line. Margaret reached for her purse. No. We do not. Mom. I'm going home. Robert finally spoke. Margaret, if Rose is alive. She is not. He flinched. I had never seen Robert flinch before. It was small, but it changed the room. Daniel noticed it too. Dad, what do you know? Robert's lips parted, then closed. Margaret pointed at him. Robert, don't you dare help her. Help who? Daniel asked. Margaret turned to him, wounded again. Your wife. She has been waiting for this. She wants to make me look unstable. I almost answered with anger. Instead, I opened my email. The chicken recipe, the grocery pickup receipt, and Daniel's text confirming the menu were all still there. I forwarded them to myself with the subject line, dinner record. Then I opened the voice memo app. The kitchen recording was there. 8 minutes and 12 seconds. My thumb hovered over it. For a second, I remembered my stepmother's broken glass again. The way everyone had looked at me while I tried to explain. The way my voice shook so badly that truth sounded like guilt. I had promised myself I would never again bring shaking hands to a clean lie. So I uploaded the memo to my cloud folder. Then I sent it to my private email. Daniel watched me. What are you sending? Everything I might need later. His face tightened. Against my mother? No, Daniel. Against confusion. That landed harder than I expected. He looked away. Claire's voice was softer now. Olivia, what was on that recording? I looked at Margaret. Ask her. Margaret smiled thinly. This is sick. Recording private family conversations now? You followed me into my kitchen. To help you. You told me to learn my place. Daniel's head snapped toward his mother. Margaret's eyes watered. I said no such thing. I tapped the phone. Her voice filled the room. You need to learn your place in this family. Claire's hand went to her mouth. Robert closed his eyes. Daniel did not move. The next line played. You think one dinner makes you the center of his life? Margaret lunged for the phone. I stepped back. Enough, Daniel said. His voice was not loud. But Margaret stopped. The house phone rang again. This time, nobody breathed. I let it ring twice. Then I picked up and pressed speaker before anyone could object. Hello? A different voice came through. Good evening. This is St. Catherine's Hospital operator returning a verification request. May I confirm I'm speaking with the Hayes residents? I looked at Margaret. Yes, I said. Daniel stepped closer. The operator continued, we show multiple recent contact attempts for Margaret Hayes regarding patient Rose Whitaker. Several calls were not completed, and one message indicated the family did not wish to be contacted. Margaret whispered, no. Daniel's face drained. What message? The operator paused. Sir, I can only state that a response was recorded from this contact line declining further outreach. I didn't decline anything, Daniel said. Claire looked at her mother. Mom? Margaret's eyes moved from face to face. For once, she had no soft voice ready. Robert said, Margaret, did you tell the hospital not to call? She took a breath. Then another. The fragile act returned, but it came late. I was protecting everyone. Daniel stepped back from her. From my grandmother? Margaret's lips tightened. You don't know what that woman did. I held the phone in my hand, its glass cold against my palm. Laura's first call had cracked the wall. This second one showed us there had been a door hidden inside it. And Margaret had been guarding the key for years. Daniel looked at me, then at the ruined table, then at his mother. For the first time that night, he did not ask me to calm down. He asked her, "What else have you lied about?" The drive to St. Catherine's Hospital felt longer than it was. Daniel drove, but his hands were too tight on the wheel. Margaret sat in the back seat behind him, silent for the first time all night. Claire sat beside her, staring out the window. Robert sat in the front passenger seat, his shoulders folded inward like a man trying to disappear. I followed in my own car. I needed distance. I needed my own keys in my own hand. At every red light, I checked my phone. Voice memo saved. Caller ID screenshot saved. Hospital number saved. Dinner receipts forwarded. Menu confirmation forwarded. Nothing left, only in my memory. When we pulled into the hospital parking lot, the air outside was cold enough to sting my cheeks. The automatic doors opened with a soft hiss, and the smell of antiseptic hit me before the warmth did. Margaret stopped just inside the entrance. I don't want Olivia in there, she said. Daniel turned. What? She has already turned this into a trial. I said, the hospital called my house. Daniel's house, Margaret corrected. Daniel looked at her. Our house. Margaret's mouth tightened. Claire shifted beside her. Mom, maybe we should just find out what's happening. I know what's happening, Margaret said. Your sister-in-law is enjoying this. I looked at Daniel. He looked tired. Conflicted. Not certain anymore. That scared me more than his anger would have. Because doubt could still be steered. A nurse at the desk asked for Rose Whitaker's room, and Margaret immediately stepped forward. I'm her daughter, she said. I need to speak with her doctor alone. The nurse checked the screen. Rose requested that Margaret Hayes come to the room, but she also asked that any family present be allowed in if they came with you. Margaret blinked. That doesn't sound like her. The nurse gave a polite smile. She was very clear. Robert whispered, Rose was always clear. Margaret turned on him. Robert. He looked down. Daniel heard it. Dad, stop acting like you know nothing. Robert rubbed his thumb against his wedding band. I knew she existed. Claire stared at him. You knew Grandma Rose was alive? I didn't know she was alive now, he said. I just knew the story never sat right. Margaret's voice went low. Not here. That was not grief. That was command. We followed the nurse down a hallway that smelled like bleach, coffee, and old flowers. Machines beeped behind half-closed doors. Somewhere, a woman laughed softly, then coughed. Margaret slowed until she was beside me. The others walked a few steps ahead. One word from you in that room, she whispered, and I promise you'll lose more than a dinner. My skin chilled under my blouse. I kept my eyes forward. You already said that in my kitchen. And you already proved you record people like a criminal. No, I said. I record people who threaten me when no one else is listening. She smiled without warmth. Daniel will never forgive you for humiliating his mother. I looked at him walking ahead, his shoulders rigid. My fear used to be that he would believe you forever. Margaret's smile faded. What changed? I stopped walking. So far, only one of us brought proof. She stepped closer, her perfume sharp and powdery, cutting through the hospital air. You think proof matters more than blood? I held her stare. It does when blood keeps lying. Daniel turned back. Everything okay? Margaret's face softened instantly. Olivia is nervous. I'm not nervous, I said. The nurse stopped outside room 412. She may be tired, the nurse said. Please keep voices calm. Margaret gave a tiny laugh. That depends on Olivia. Claire looked at her, then at me. For the first time, Claire did not defend her. She just looked confused. The room was dim except for the lamp near the bed. An old woman lay under a thin cotton blanket, her silver hair brushed away from a face that looked delicate but not weak. Her eyes opened when we entered. She looked first at Margaret. Then she smiled with a sadness that filled the room. Maggie. Margaret froze. Daniel's breath caught. Claire whispered, "Oh my God." Rose lifted a trembling hand from the blanket. You came. Margaret did not move. Rose's eyes shifted to Daniel. You must be Daniel. Daniel stepped closer, stunned. Yes. Rose's smile broke a little. You have your grandfather's eyes. Robert covered his mouth. Margaret snapped, she doesn't know what she's saying. Rose looked at her. I know exactly what I'm saying, Maggie. Don't call me that. I named you Margaret, Rose said softly. But you hated it when you were little. You said Maggie sounded like a girl who could run fast. The room went quiet. That kind of detail does not come from a scam call. Daniel turned to his mother. You said she died. Margaret swallowed. I said what I had to say. Claire's voice shook. What does that mean? Rose looked at Claire. You must be Claire. Your mother sent me one picture when you were born. Just one. You had a pink blanket and a little yellow hat. Claire's eyes filled. I never knew you existed. Rose closed her eyes. I know. Margaret stepped forward. That is enough. Rose opened her eyes again. No, Maggie. It was enough when you told them I was dead. Daniel's face tightened. Why would she do that? Rose looked at him for a long moment. Because she told me you all wanted nothing to do with me. Margaret hissed, stop. Rose's fingers gripped the blanket. She told me Daniel was too busy. She said Claire thought I was a burden. She said Robert didn't want old family trouble near his home. Robert shook his head. No. I never said that. Rose looked at him. I hoped you didn't. Margaret laughed, but it cracked halfway through. She is confused. She says things. Old people do that. Daniel turned sharply. Mom, don't talk about her like she's already dead. The words landed. Margaret stared at him as if he had betrayed her. Claire wiped her cheek. Grandma Rose, why didn't you call us yourself? Rose took a slow breath. I tried years ago. Numbers changed. Letters came back. Then Margaret told me Daniel had asked her to stop upsetting the family. Daniel closed his eyes. I never knew. I know that now, Rose said. Margaret's hand tightened around her purse strap. You don't know anything. You don't know what she did to me. Rose looked at her daughter with tired love. I made mistakes. I was proud. I pushed too hard. But I never abandoned you. Margaret's voice sharpened. You made me feel small my whole life. And you punished your children for it? Margaret looked away. That was the first honest silence she had given us. I stood near the wall, my back against cool painted plaster. My heartbeat had slowed, but my chest felt heavy. This was bigger than dinner. The ruined chicken, the insults, the fake trembling, the gravy on the linen. They were not random attacks. They were practice. Margaret had been controlling stories for years. Rose looked at me then. You're Olivia. I nodded. Yes. She said you were difficult. I almost laughed, but it came out as a breath. She says that when I notice things. Rose smiled faintly. Then keep noticing. Margaret snapped, you have no idea what she's done to this family. Rose looked at Daniel. What did she do tonight? Daniel's jaw moved, but no words came. Claire answered before him. Mom ruined dinner, blamed Olivia, then tried to make us think Olivia was attacking her. Margaret stared at Claire. I raised you. Claire's voice trembled. I know. That's why this hurts. Robert stepped closer to Rose's bed. I should have asked more questions. Margaret turned on him. You were my husband. You were supposed to trust me. Robert's eyes lifted. I did. That may have been the problem. The monitor beside Rose beeped steadily. Rose reached toward Daniel. He took her hand. Her skin looked thin against his fingers, but her grip seemed firm. I didn't want money, she said. I didn't want to take anything. I only wanted to see what became of you. Daniel's eyes shone. I'm sorry. Rose shook her head. You didn't bury me. Margaret flinched. I saw it. Everyone did. The lie had changed shape. It was no longer a misunderstanding. It had a body. It had a name. And that name was Rose Whitaker. Margaret backed toward the door. I can't do this. Daniel looked at her. No. You don't get to leave every time the truth enters the room. Her face twisted. You sound just like your wife. For once, he did not apologize for that. He looked at me, then back at his mother. Good. We left the hospital after midnight, but the truth came home with us. It sat between Daniel and me in the car like another person. He drove this time because my hands were too stiff around the keys. Rain tapped against the windshield, soft at first, then harder, blurring the streetlights into long gold lines. Neither of us spoke for 7 minutes. I counted. Not because the silence mattered. Because counting kept me from breaking. Daniel finally said, I don't know what to do with this. I looked at him. You start by not asking me to make it easier for her. He swallowed. I didn't know. I know. I mean it, Olivia. I didn't know my grandmother was alive. I believe you. He glanced at me. But you knew your mother hurt me tonight, and you still wanted me to smooth it over. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. The rubber squeaked under his fingers. I was trying to stop the night from exploding. It already had. He exhaled hard. I hate this. So do I. Rain slid down my window in crooked lines. I watched them instead of his face because if I looked at him too long, I might soften before the truth had room to breathe. At home, the dining room still looked like a crime scene made of gravy and white linen. The ruined chicken sat cold on the platter. Margaret's untouched glass of sparkling water had gone flat. One of the candles had burned itself into a wax puddle. Daniel stood in the doorway. I'll clean it. No, I said. Leave it for a minute. Why? Because I need pictures. He turned slowly. Pictures? Yes. He rubbed his forehead. Liv. Do not do that. Do what? Say my name like evidence is a personal attack. He closed his mouth. I took photos of the table from 3 angles. The gravy boat. The placement of Margaret's chair. The dish she claimed I served to make her sick. The almond sitting untouched on the far side of the table. Then I opened my notes app and wrote the timeline. 6:12 p.m. Margaret arrived. 6:47 p.m. First complaint about salt. 6:55 p.m. Allergy accusation. 7:03 p.m. Gravy boat knocked over. 7:09 p.m. Kitchen threat recorded. 7:18 p.m. Hospital first call. 7:31 p.m. Hospital second call. Daniel watched from the doorway. His face had that wounded look people wear when they realize pain is no longer theoretical. I feel like I'm watching you build a case against my mother. I stopped typing. I'm building a case against the version of the truth she'll build tomorrow. He looked away. That was when my phone buzzed. A text from Claire. I opened it with a tight thumb. I'm sorry. I don't know what I believe yet, but I'm sorry I didn't say more. I stared at it. Daniel asked, "Who is it?" Claire. What did she say? I handed him the phone. He read it and sat down slowly. She doesn't know what she believes. No, I said. But she knows something is wrong. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Claire. Mom texted Aunt Helen before dinner. She said you were acting strange lately and might try to embarrass her tonight. My breath stopped. Daniel looked up. What? I turned the screen toward him. He read it once. Then again. That was before dinner? Yes. She planned this. I did not answer. I did not have to. The next message came with a screenshot. Margaret's text to Aunt Helen said, "I'm worried about Olivia. She's been unstable and jealous. If dinner goes badly, please remember I tried to be kind." Daniel's mouth parted. I could see the boy in him fighting the husband. The son fighting the witness. He whispered, "Why would she do that?" Because she needed an audience prepared before the show started. He stood too fast. I need to call her. No. She's my mother. And she is already working. He stared at me. I held up Claire's screenshot. This is not the time to ask the arsonist why the smoke smells strange. His jaw clenched. Then his phone rang. Margaret. The name lit up the screen like a warning. Daniel looked at it, then at me. Put it on speaker, I said. He answered. Mom. Margaret was crying. Not loud. Worse. Soft, controlled, almost beautiful. Daniel, I'm so scared. His face changed. It was instant. That old training. What happened? I can't breathe. My chest feels tight. Olivia pushed too hard. Rose pushed too hard. Everyone did. I closed my eyes. There it was. A new tactic. Not insult. Not denial. Collapse. Daniel stood. Do you need an ambulance? No, Margaret whispered. No hospital. Please. I can't go back there. Not after what your wife did. My eyes opened. Daniel looked at me. I shook my head once. Margaret continued, she harassed an old woman in a hospital bed. She made your father turn against me. She recorded me in private. What kind of person does that? Daniel's voice trembled. Mom, did you text Aunt Helen before dinner about Olivia? Silence. Then Margaret sobbed. I knew she would do this. That's not an answer. She has poisoned you. Mom. She wants me dead, Daniel. I felt my stomach drop. Daniel closed his eyes. Don't say that. It's true. She wants my place. She wants my son. She wants my family name. I stepped closer to Daniel, not touching him. He looked at me like a drowning man. I said quietly, ask her about Rose. Daniel swallowed. Why did you tell me Grandma Rose was dead? Margaret's voice hardened under the tears. Because dead was cleaner than abandoned. That doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense to a mother who had to protect her children. Protect us from what? From shame. Daniel went still. What shame? Margaret sniffed. You were too young. Claire was too sensitive. Robert never had the spine. I carried it alone. I saw the shift. She was no longer denying the lie. She was decorating it. Daniel asked, did you tell the hospital not to contact us? I told them my family was not to be disturbed. Why? Because Rose had no right to crawl back when she got lonely. His face went pale. Mom, she's sick. She was always sick when she wanted attention. I touched Daniel's arm. His skin was cold. He ended the call without saying goodbye. The quiet afterward felt violent. He sat at the table, right beside the gravy stain. I almost believed her, he said. I sat across from him. That's why she called you first. He looked at the ruined dinner. I hate myself for that. Don't waste time hating yourself. Verify. He lifted his eyes. What? If she says Olivia harassed Rose, verify with the hospital. If she says chest pain, tell her to get medical help. If she says I lied, check the records. Stop letting panic make decisions. His breathing slowed. I opened my laptop. What are you doing? Organizing. I created a folder and named it Hayes Timeline. Inside it, I placed the voice memo, dinner photos, screenshots, hospital notes, and Claire's messages. Then I opened our joint bank account. A transfer stared back at me. 3 weeks earlier. $4,800 to Margaret Hayes. Memo, cardiac procedure support. My mouth went dry. Daniel. He came around the table. I pointed. His face changed again. No. You sent this? She said insurance was delayed. She said she needed help before the procedure. What procedure? He did not answer. I opened the hospital portal contact page and dialed billing through the main number. Daniel listened while I asked only general verification questions, careful and calm. No private details. No pretending. Just whether St. Catherine's had any record of Margaret Hayes as a cardiac procedure patient in the last month. The billing clerk said, I'm sorry, ma'am, I cannot find a Margaret Hayes with that service record. Daniel sat down slowly. The rain kept tapping the windows. Tap. 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 Like someone patient waiting to be let in. He whispered, she used us. She used your guilt. He looked at me with wet eyes. I should have protected you. Yes, I said. He flinched. I let the truth sit there before I softened it. And now you can start. My phone buzzed again. Claire. Dad says Mom made him stop mentioning Rose years ago. He thought it was family trauma. He says he was wrong. I read it out loud. Daniel lowered his head into his hands. I reached across the table and placed the printed grocery receipt beside the bank transfer screenshot. The paper edge sliced a thin line into my finger. A small red mark appeared. I stared at it, strangely calm. Receipts don't shake. If you believe receipts matter more than reputation, stay with the last receipt, because this is where Margaret's story started falling apart. Daniel lifted his head. What do we do now? I opened a clean document. We stop reacting. We make a timeline. We keep copies. We talk to Rose when she's ready. We ask Claire and Robert for what they know. And we do not let your mother turn proof into cruelty. He nodded slowly. Then his phone lit up again. A text from Margaret. If you choose that woman over me tonight, don't come crying when my heart finally gives out. Daniel stared at the message. His hand shook. This was the complication I feared. Not Margaret's lie. Daniel's love for the liar. He looked at me. She knows exactly where to press. I said, then move the wound. What does that mean? It means you do not answer from guilt. You answer from fact. He typed slowly. If you are having chest pain, call emergency services. If this is about Olivia, we will discuss facts tomorrow. He hit send. Then he turned his phone face down. For the first time all night, he chose evidence before fear. And in the ruined dining room, with gravy drying into the linen and rain washing the windows clean, I felt my despair shift into something quieter. Not revenge yet. A plan. By morning, Margaret had changed the battlefield. She stopped calling Daniel. She started calling everyone else. Claire sent the first warning before breakfast. Mom wants everyone at her house tonight. She says she is ready to tell the truth. Daniel read it at the kitchen counter, still wearing yesterday's shirt, his hair damp from a shower that had not helped him look rested. She wants a family meeting, he said. I poured coffee and watched steam curl above the mug. Of course she does. He looked up. You don't think she'll explain? I think she'll perform. He winced, but he did not defend her. That was progress. Small, painful progress. My finger still had the thin paper cut from the receipt. I had covered it with a bandage, but it stung every time I bent it. A tiny wound from proof. Daniel touched the edge of his phone. Claire said Dad is going. Then we go too. His eyes lifted to mine. You're sure? No, I said. But I'm done letting her hold court without cross-examination. His mouth twitched like he almost smiled, then the guilt came back. She's my mother. I know. She raised me. I know that too. She also lied to you about your grandmother being dead. The words sat between us. Daniel nodded slowly. I know. That evening, Margaret's house smelled like lemon polish and sharp perfume. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. The silver frames on the mantel had been straightened. The throw pillows sat like obedient guests. A tray of tea and biscuits waited in the living room, untouched. Margaret sat in her usual chair near the fireplace. Not the sofa. The chair. Her throne. Robert stood by the window. Claire sat on the edge of the couch, her purse still in her lap like she might need to leave quickly. Daniel and I came in last. Margaret looked at him, not me. Thank you for coming, sweetheart. Daniel said, we're here to hear the truth. Margaret smiled sadly. That is all I ever wanted. I sat beside Daniel. Her eyes flicked to me. I see you brought your recorder. I placed my phone face down on my knee. I brought my memory too. You seem to dislike both. Claire whispered, Olivia. Margaret lifted a hand. No, let her. I want everyone to see what I've been dealing with. Daniel leaned forward. Mom, don't start with Olivia. Start with Rose. Margaret's lips pressed together. For years, I protected this family from a woman who destroyed my childhood. Robert turned from the window. Margaret. No, Robert. You stayed silent long enough. Let me speak. He looked tired, older than he had the night before. Margaret clasped her hands in her lap. My mother was cruel. Cold. Controlling. She made me feel worthless. When I married your father, I chose peace. I chose a clean life. I chose not to bring poison into my children's home. Claire's eyes filled with conflict. Why didn't you just say that? Margaret's voice softened. Because children should not inherit ugliness. Daniel stared at the carpet. For one dangerous second, I saw him absorbing it. Margaret saw it too. She leaned forward. I told you she was dead because in every way that mattered, she was dead to me. I felt Daniel's body shift beside mine. That was the trick. She was not denying anymore. She was making the lie sound protective. I touched the seam of the couch cushion with my thumb. The fabric was rough, tightly woven, the kind of texture that kept me grounded. My private fear rose like cold water. Maybe Daniel would choose the softer story. Maybe everyone would. Margaret continued, then Olivia came along with her questions, her judgment, her need to be right. I looked at her. My questions did not put Rose in that hospital bed alone. No, Margaret said, eyes flashing. Rose did that to herself. Robert spoke quietly. She asked about Daniel for years, didn't she? Margaret's head turned. What? He stepped away from the window. She sent cards. I remember one. Blue envelope. You threw it in the trash before Daniel came home from school. Daniel looked up. You saw that? Robert swallowed. I told myself it was between your mother and Rose. Claire's voice broke. Dad. I was wrong, he said. Margaret stood. You were protecting your wife. No, Robert said. I was avoiding a fight. The room changed. Margaret knew it. Her fake sadness sharpened. You all think one hospital call makes Rose innocent? No, I said. It makes her alive. Margaret pointed at me. This is exactly what I mean. You twist everything into a courtroom. I opened my phone. You texted Aunt Helen before dinner. Her face went still. Claire looked at me. Show them. I sent the screenshot to the family group chat Claire had created that afternoon. Phones buzzed around the room. Daniel read it aloud. I'm worried about Olivia. She's been unstable and jealous. If dinner goes badly, please remember I tried to be kind. Robert looked at Margaret. You sent that before dinner? Margaret lifted her chin. I had concerns. Claire's voice was small. You told me to watch Olivia. Margaret looked at her daughter. I told you to be aware. No, Claire said. You said something was wrong with her. You said she might try to hurt you emotionally. Margaret's eyes narrowed. And you believed me because you know how she speaks to me. Claire looked at me, then down at her hands. I believed you because believing you was easier than questioning everything. Silence followed that. The fireplace clicked softly. Margaret sat back down, slower this time. Fine, she said. I warned people because Olivia has never liked me. Daniel's voice was low. You knocked over the gravy boat. I was startled. You accused her of trying to make you sick. She put almonds on the table. Across from you, I said. On a dish, Daniel confirmed. She looked at him. Sweetheart, I forgot. I tapped my phone again. Her kitchen voice filled the room. You ruined the family. I'm just correcting the table. Robert closed his eyes. Claire covered her mouth. Daniel stared at the floor as if he could see years cracking under it. Margaret rose again. That recording is illegal. No, I said. It is inconvenient. You followed me around like a spy. You followed me into my kitchen and threatened me. She turned to Daniel. Are you going to let her speak to me this way? Daniel did not answer quickly. I watched him fight it. The old reflex. The guilt. The son trained to rescue the mother before checking who started the fire. Then he said, I'm going to let her finish. Margaret blinked. I let out a breath I did not know I had trapped. Claire looked at me differently then. Not fully on my side yet. But no longer across from me. I opened the bank screenshot. 3 weeks ago, Daniel sent you $4,800 for a cardiac procedure. Margaret's mouth tightened. That was private. It was our emergency fund. Daniel looked at her. I called billing. St. Catherine's had no record of that procedure. Margaret's face hardened. There are other hospitals. Which one? Daniel asked. She did not answer. Robert whispered, Margaret. She turned on him. Don't you dare look at me like that. He stepped back, then stopped himself. No. I should have looked sooner. Margaret's breath came faster. You have no idea what I carried. I said, then explain it without stealing money or burying a living woman. Her eyes snapped to mine. You think you're so clean because you work near hospitals and forms and patient rules. You think records make you better than family. And there it was. The real crack. Daniel looked at me. Claire whispered, what does your job have to do with this? Margaret's lips parted. Then closed. I answered. She knew I would verify things. Ingredients. Calls. Billing. Hospital contacts. She knew I wouldn't just accept a dramatic story if the facts didn't match. Margaret laughed bitterly. You always had to prove you were smarter. No, I said. I had to prove I wasn't crazy. That line emptied the room. My throat tightened, but I stayed still. When someone lies calmly enough, the person telling the truth always looks unstable first. Claire's eyes filled again. Daniel reached for my hand. This time, I let him. Margaret stared at our joined hands. Her face changed. Not sadness. Not fear. Hatred. You're taking him from me. Daniel lifted his head. No, Mom. She whispered, yes. He stood slowly. Olivia didn't take me. Your lies pushed me away. Margaret's mouth trembled, but no tears came. The mother act cracked. Under it was not weakness. It was ownership. And for the first time in that perfect lemon-polished room, everyone could smell the rot beneath the shine. The hospital called again the next morning. Daniel and I were sitting at the kitchen table with coffee neither of us had touched. The folder on my laptop was open between us, neat and terrible. Voice memo. Screenshots. Bank transfer. Hospital call notes. Claire's messages. Robert's admission. Everything had a date. Everything had a place. Everything Margaret hated most. Daniel's phone rang first. He looked at the screen. St. Catherine's. My stomach tightened. Answer it. He put it on speaker. Hello, this is Daniel Hayes. A woman said, Mr. Hayes, this is Laura Mitchell from Patient Services. Rose Whitaker has requested a care discussion this afternoon. She asked that Margaret Hayes be present, along with immediate family if they are willing. Daniel looked at me. His face had gone still. What is this about? I can't discuss full details over the phone, Laura said. But Rose has concerns about past contact restrictions, financial handling, and family access. Daniel closed his eyes. Financial handling. The words did not shout. They did not need to. I wrote them down. Daniel asked, is my mother required to attend? Rose requested her, Laura said. We cannot force attendance, but we can document refusal. Daniel's jaw tightened. We'll be there. After he ended the call, the room was quiet except for the refrigerator humming. He whispered, financial handling. I looked at the bank transfer screenshot. Now we know why she panicked. His phone buzzed again before he could answer. Margaret. He stared at the name. Then he set it on speaker. Mom. Her voice was icy. So she got what she wanted. Daniel did not move. Rose requested a care meeting. Rose requested nothing. Olivia arranged this. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny. Because the lie had become predictable. Daniel said, Olivia didn't call Rose. She works with hospitals. She knows how to manipulate these people. I know how to verify basic facts, I said. Margaret inhaled sharply. You are in the room? It's our kitchen, I said. Remember? Her voice dropped. You smug little thief. Daniel sat up. What did you say? She has stolen my family, and if she pushes this any further, I will tell everyone exactly what she is. I leaned closer to the phone. Say it clearly, Margaret. For 1 second, she was silent. Then she said, I will say you harassed my mother. I will say you accessed private information. I will say you recorded me illegally. I will say you turned my son against me while I was ill. Daniel's face hardened. Mom, stop. No, she snapped. You stop. You stop letting her lead you around like some trained dog. Daniel flinched, but he stayed steady. That is the last time you speak about my wife like that. Margaret laughed. There she is. Sitting beside you, feeding you lines. No, he said. She is sitting beside me because she stayed while you lied. The silence after that was clean. Then Margaret spoke softly. If I die from this stress, that will be on you. His hand curled on the table. I saw the old wound open. I saw the boy inside him reach for guilt. I put my hand over his. He looked at me. I whispered, facts. Daniel swallowed. If you are having chest pain, call emergency services. You cold, cruel boy. If you are not, we will see you at the hospital. He ended the call. His lips were pale. I hated that. I know. She knows I hate that. Yes. He stared at the phone. I almost apologized. But you didn't. He nodded once, slowly. No. I didn't. That afternoon, St. Catherine's looked different. Not softer. Not safer. Just clearer. The fluorescent lights hummed above us. The floor smelled like disinfectant and rainwater from wet shoes. I carried a printed copy of the timeline in a plain blue folder. My lips were dry, and I kept pressing them together. Part of me still wanted Margaret to apologize. That was the embarrassing part. Not because she deserved the chance. Because I wanted the pain to have a clean ending. Daniel walked beside me. Claire and Robert were already near patient services. Claire's eyes were red, but her chin was lifted. Mom's here, she said. Margaret stood by the elevators in a cream coat, pearls at her throat, hair perfect. She looked like a woman arriving for church. Not accountability. When she saw the folder in my hand, her mouth tightened. Of course, she said. The little prosecutor. I said nothing. Daniel said, we're here for Rose. Margaret looked at Claire. You too? Claire hugged her arms. I'm here because Grandma asked. Margaret's eyes flashed. She is not Grandma. She is Rose. Robert spoke quietly. She is my children's grandmother. Margaret turned to him. You found courage late. Robert nodded. Yes. That answer seemed to disturb her more than an argument. Laura Mitchell led us into a small consultation room near Rose's floor. Rose sat in a wheelchair beside the table, a blanket over her knees. A social worker sat next to her with a notepad. Rose looked tired, but her eyes were sharp. Maggie, she said. Margaret did not sit. Don't start with that name. Rose looked at the empty chair. Sit down, Margaret. For once, Margaret obeyed. The social worker introduced herself as Ellen. Her voice was calm, but her eyes missed nothing. Rose has requested this meeting to clarify family contact preferences and concerns about prior communication barriers. Margaret folded her hands. I am sure Rose is confused. Rose smiled sadly. I may be old, but I am not convenient. Claire looked down, almost crying. Ellen said, Rose, would you like to speak first? Rose nodded. I want my family to know I tried to reach them. Margaret stared at the table. Rose continued, I sent birthday cards. Letters. I called old numbers. When I finally reached Margaret, she told me Daniel and Claire wanted no contact. Daniel's voice broke. That wasn't true. I know that now, Rose said. Margaret said, you had no right to force yourself back. Rose turned to her. I never forced. I asked. Ellen wrote something down. Rose looked at Robert. I sent a check once. For Daniel's college graduation. I never knew if he got it. Robert frowned. A check? Daniel looked at Margaret. Her face had gone flat. Rose said, I sent others too. Small ones. Christmas. Birthdays. Later, when my hands got bad, I asked Margaret to make sure they reached you. Claire whispered, "We never got checks." Margaret's chair scraped slightly. "This is absurd." I opened the folder. Daniel looked at me, then nodded. I took out the bank transfer screenshot. 3 weeks ago, Margaret asked Daniel for $4,800 for a cardiac procedure. Margaret said, "That has nothing to do with Rose." I placed the hospital billing verification note beside it. There was no record of that procedure at St. Catherine's. Margaret's mouth twisted. "You are not a doctor. You are not family." Daniel said, "She is my wife." Margaret snapped, "She is the reason you are sitting here judging me." "No," he said. "Your choices are." That was Daniel's one reaction. Quiet. Final. Ellen looked at Margaret. "Mrs. Hayes, did you receive funds from your son for a medical procedure?" Margaret lifted her chin. "My private health is not a public trial." Rose's voice was thin but steady. "Maggie, did you take the checks?" Margaret looked at her mother. For the first time, she looked cornered. Not ill. Cornered. "You owed me." The room stopped. Claire whispered, "Mom." Margaret turned on Rose. "You owed me years. You owed me tenderness. You owed me a mother who didn't make me feel like a failure every time I breathed." Rose's face crumpled. "I was hard on you. You were cruel." "Maybe I was." Margaret blinked. Rose's voice shook. "But I did not tell your children you were dead." Margaret looked away. I felt the words settle into the walls. Ellen asked, "Mrs. Hayes, are you saying funds intended for Daniel and Claire were redirected?" Margaret stood. "I am saying this family would have been peaceful if Olivia had stayed in her place." I stood too. "No, Margaret. This family was peaceful because everyone was quiet." Her eyes burned into mine. "You wanted me quiet because quiet people are easier to bury." Rose closed her eyes. Claire began to cry silently. Margaret pointed at me. "You are enjoying this." I shook my head. "I am sick from this." My voice stayed calm. That surprised even me. "I'm not here to destroy you, Margaret. I'm here to stop you." Daniel took the folder from my hand and placed it on the table. "The transfer is being reported to the bank as disputed until we understand what happened. You no longer have access to our emergency fund. You no longer get medical money without documentation. And you do not speak for this family again." Margaret stared at him. "You would choose her over me?" Daniel's throat moved. "I choose the truth over your control." Margaret's lips trembled. "I gave you everything. You gave me guilt and called it love." She slapped the table with her palm. "I was afraid." Nobody moved. Her voice cracked. "I was afraid she would take you. I was afraid Rose would come back and make me small again. I was afraid Olivia would see through me because she checks everything, and you would all look at me like this." She looked around the room. "Like I'm some monster." Rose whispered, "Fear explains damage. It does not excuse it." Margaret looked at her mother with wet eyes. "You taught me that." Rose nodded. "Then I failed you twice." For a moment, Margaret looked almost human. Then she reached for her purse. "I'm done." Ellen stood. "Mrs. Hayes, before you leave, Rose has updated her contact preferences. Future communication regarding her care will not go solely through you." Margaret froze. "That is not your decision." Rose lifted her head. "It is mine." Ellen continued, "Daniel and Claire will be listed for family contact with Rose's consent. Any financial concerns she raised will be documented and referred through the proper channels." Margaret looked at Daniel one last time. He did not move toward her. Claire did not rise. Robert did not apologize. And I did not shrink. Margaret walked out with her pearls straight and her story broken. When the door closed, Rose began to cry. Daniel knelt beside her wheelchair. "I'm sorry," he said. Rose touched his face. "You didn't bury me." He looked at me then. Not asking me to fix it. Not asking me to forgive it. Just seeing me. Finally seeing the whole cost. I sat down because my legs had started to shake. The fluorescent hum filled the room again. Dry air scraped my throat. My hands were steady, but the rest of me felt emptied out. Revenge did not feel like fire. It felt like a door opening after years without air. And as Daniel reached for my hand in that hospital room, I understood something I wish I had known at dinner. The truth does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it calls the house phone. Sometimes it waits in a hospital bed. Sometimes it asks for the woman who buried it and says, calmly, "I am still here." 3 weeks later, I bought rosemary again. For a long time, I stood in the grocery aisle with the little plastic packet in my hand, breathing in the sharp green scent through the wrapper. It should have been simple. Herbs. Chicken. Potatoes. A dinner. But my body remembered what my mind had already survived. Daniel found me there. "You don't have to make it," he said. "I know." "Then why are you?" I looked at the rosemary. "Because she ruined a dinner. She doesn't get to ruin the smell of it too." He took the basket from my hand. "Then we make it together." So we did. That Sunday, our dining room looked different. Not perfect. Just honest. No silver candlesticks. No white linen. No performance. Just a clean wooden table, warm plates, and 5 people who knew silence could be either protection or cowardice. Rose sat at the head of the table because Daniel insisted. She had protested. "I don't need a throne," she said. Daniel smiled gently. "Good. It's not a throne. It's a place." Rose touched the chair back like it might disappear. Claire came early and brought flowers. She stood in the doorway with them pressed against her chest. "I didn't know what kind you liked," she told Rose. Rose smiled. "At my age, sweetheart, if they're alive, I like them." Claire laughed, then cried. "I'm sorry," Claire said. I defended Mom because doubting her meant doubting my whole childhood. Rose reached for her hand. "That is a hard door to open." Claire nodded. "I'm still angry." "You should be." "I'm angry at her. At Dad. At Daniel. At myself." Rose looked at her kindly. "Then don't waste it. Let it teach you where not to sleep again." Robert arrived next, carrying a pie from a bakery because he said he did not trust himself with an oven. He stood near Rose for a moment, unable to speak. Rose looked up at him. "Robert." He swallowed. "I should have called you." "Yes," she said. He lowered his eyes. "I should have asked questions." "Yes. I let peace become an excuse." Rose studied him. "That one matters." He nodded, eyes wet. "It won't happen again." Rose took his hand. "Then that is where you begin." Daniel watched from the kitchen doorway. I could feel his pain from across the room, but this time, he did not ask me to carry it for him. When dinner was ready, I placed the rosemary chicken in the center of the table. For 1 second, nobody moved. The scent rose warm and clean, butter and herbs and roasted skin. My wedding ring tapped softly against the serving spoon. Daniel looked at the dish, then at me. "This time," I said, "nobody touches it until I sit down too." Claire smiled through tears. "Fair." Robert pulled out my chair. Rose lifted her glass of water. "To food that makes it all the way to the table." A small laugh moved through the room. Not loud. Not healed. But real. We ate slowly. Nobody performed. Nobody praised too much. Nobody apologized to the air instead of the person they hurt. After dinner, Daniel asked me to step into the hallway. His face was nervous in a way I had not seen since our wedding day. "What is it?" I asked. He took my hands. His palms were warm, but his fingers shook. "I made a vow to protect you," he said. "And then I waited for proof before I acted like you deserved protection." My throat tightened. "Daniel. No. Please let me say it." I stayed quiet. He looked straight at me. "I should have protected you before you had to prove you deserved it." The words landed alone. I looked down at our hands. "I needed you that night." "I know. You heard her." "I know. And you looked at me like peace mattered more than truth." His eyes filled. "I did." That admission hurt and healed at the same time. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "I wrote something. Not for a ceremony. Not for anyone else. Just because I needed the words to exist." I nodded. He unfolded it. "I vow to believe your pain before it becomes evidence. I vow to verify before I defend. I vow to never again confuse my guilt with loyalty. And I vow that in our home, love will not require silence." I closed my eyes. The old fear inside me loosened. Not vanished. Loosened. When I opened them, Daniel was crying. "I know one speech doesn't fix it," he said. "No," I whispered. "But it starts cleaning the right wound." He pressed his forehead to mine. "I love you. I love you too." When we returned to the dining room, Rose was watching us with a soft expression. Claire was stacking plates badly. Robert was pretending not to notice that she was doing it wrong. Rose said, "Come here, Olivia." I sat beside her. She took my hand. Her skin was thin and warm. "Margaret was afraid of being abandoned," she said. I said nothing. I made mistakes that fed that fear. That still doesn't excuse what she did. "No," Rose said. "Fear explains damage. It does not excuse it." I looked toward the table, where the empty platter sat clean except for rosemary stems and crumbs. Rose squeezed my hand. "You did not take revenge by becoming cruel." "I wanted to." "Of course you did." That made me smile a little. She smiled back. "But you chose dignity." People underestimate how sharp dignity can be. Across the room, Claire said, "Mom called yesterday." Daniel looked up. Rose's hand tightened around mine. Claire continued, "I didn't answer. I texted that I would speak when there was accountability, not theater." Robert nodded. I sent the same. Daniel looked at me. "I haven't replied." I asked, "Do you want to?" "Not yet." "Then don't." He breathed out. "I don't feel guilty." Then he paused. "I mean, I do. But it doesn't drive." Rose raised her glass. "That is a victory." And it was. Not the loud kind. Not the kind with a crowd gasping or a villain begging. Margaret did not appear at the door. She did not collapse into apology. She did not suddenly become the mother Daniel deserved. Some people do not give closure. Sometimes closure is the moment you stop handing them the pen. That night, after everyone left, Daniel and I stood over the dining table together. The ruined version of that dinner still lived somewhere in me, but it no longer owned the room. I ran my hand over the clean wood. "I thought revenge would feel bigger," I said. Daniel looked at me. "What does it feel like?" I thought about Margaret's face in the hospital. Rose's hand in mine. Claire's apology. Robert's late honesty. Daniel's vow in the hallway. "Quiet," I said. Daniel nodded. "Good quiet?" I looked at the empty platter. "Earned quiet." I learned that betrayal does not always shout from across the table. Sometimes it smiles, spills the gravy, and calls itself family. And revenge does not always mean destroying someone. Sometimes it means saving the receipt, answering the call, and staying seated when the truth finally walks in. If you have ever had someone twist the whole room against you, share your story below. Because here on the last receipt, we know one thing for sure. The truth may arrive late, but when it does, it knows exactly whose name to call.